Chapter 1. The auction morning mist still swirled over the village square when Elara felt the cold touch of iron on her wrists. Heavy shackles snapped in place with a metallic clang, the sound echoing off the stone walls of the surrounding buildings. She stood on a roughly built wooden platform among other debtors, a pathetic procession of broken fates and shattered hopes. The square was gradually filling with people. Merchants abandoned their stalls, housewives paused their morning chores, and even children stopped their games to gawk at the monthly debtors' auction. Elara tried not to meet the eyes of her fellow villagers, but she could feel their stares, some sympathetic, most indifferent, and a few openly gloating. Beside her stood a young woman barely holding back her sobs. On the other side, an elderly man gazed emptily into space, the look of one who had lost all hope. They were all merchandise, put up for sale to cover debts. Debts that, in most cases, had not been their fault. "Next lot!" cried the auctioneer, a portly man in a velvet doublet much too tight for his considerable girth. His voice, strengthened by a simple amplifying spell, rang out across the square. "Elara Thorn, 22 years old, healer with—" He paused theatrically. "Special abilities." A murmur spread through the crowd at those words, like wind rustling a wheat field. Everyone knew about her gift, a forbidden blood magic capable of healing even mortal wounds, snatching someone back from death's very door. A magic outlawed for 3 centuries, ever since the Blood Witch nearly destroyed half the kingdom by draining her victim's life force. Elara lifted her head, emerald green eyes burning with defiance despite the humiliation of her position. Her long chestnut hair, her former pride, hung in tangled strands. The guards hadn't allowed her to tidy herself before the auction. The plain gray dress she'd been given was far too big, hanging off her thin frame like a sack. She hadn't asked for this gift. Hadn't asked that, at 16, holding her dying mother's hand, a strange power would suddenly awaken in her blood. Hadn't asked for her father to fall into debt trying to find healers for her mother, when Elara's own magic had proved too wild, too uncontrollable. And she certainly hadn't asked to end up here, put up for sale like cattle. "Starting bid, 50 gold, announced the auctioneer, and the crowd began to stir. 70, shouted the fat merchant Mortimer, owner of the largest trading house in town. Everyone knew his fondness for young women, especially those unable to resist. He licked his fleshy lips, eyeing Elara from head to toe. 100, interrupted Harold, the owner of the Drunken Boar Tavern. His establishment was known not only for strong ale, but also for the girls who served customers in the upstairs rooms. 120, called out the local landowner, eager to join the bidding. Elara closed her eyes, trying to separate herself from what was happening. As a child, her mother had told her fairy tales of princesses and knights, of kind fairies and happy endings. How naive she'd been to believe in those stories. In the real world, there was no room for miracles, only cruelty and indifference. But then, suddenly, the air in the hall changed. The temperature dropped several degrees, and people's breaths became visible in the cold air. The crowd parted, as if pushed aside by an invisible force, forming a path for a tall figure cloaked in darkness. The stranger moved with a predator's grace, each step measured, dangerous. His cloak hid his face, but Elara could sense power radiating from him, ancient, primal, making every instinct scream of danger. 1,000 gold, intoned a deep voice that sent chills racing down Elara's spine. There was something in that voice, something inhuman, something reminiscent of the barely restrained growl of a beast in human form. The room froze. Such a sum hadn't been offered even for the most skilled craftsmen or the most beautiful concubines. It was more than most present would see in a lifetime. The auctioneer opened and closed his mouth several times like a fish washed ashore before stammering out, "Sold to—" The stranger pushed back his hood and a gasp rippled through the crowd, equal parts awe and fear. "To Lord Cassian Blackwood," he replied, and his name sounded like a sentence. Elara's head snapped up, and she met the most unusual eyes she had ever seen. Silvery gray, streaked with gold, like lightning in a stormy sky. Predator's eyes, the eyes of a creature at the top of the food chain. Black hair, slightly wavy and falling to his shoulders, framed a face with sharp, stone-chiseled features. High cheekbones, a straight nose, sensual lips twisted in a slight, almost mocking smile. But above all, it was the aura of power emanating from him that struck her. Not just physical strength, though his tall, muscular frame spoke of a man who could break another with his bare hands, but another kind of power. Ancient, wild, barely restrained. The Wolf Lord. She'd heard of him, the ruler of the northern lands, alpha of the mightiest pack in the kingdom. Tales said he'd become alpha at an improbably young age by defeating the previous leader in single combat. That his wolf was larger and fiercer than any other. That even other alphas feared to challenge him. That he was ruthless and merciless to his enemies, but protected his pack with the ferocity of a berserker. "My lord." The auctioneer bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the platform. "What an honor. What an incredible honor. The documents will be ready immediately, I swear on my life." Cassian ignored his babbling, striding straight for the platform. He moved with that special grace that marked a shifter. Too fluid for a human, too dangerous. The crowd parted before him like water before a ship's bow. He stepped up onto the platform in a single smooth motion, not bothering with the stairs. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Elara barely reached his chin and had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Cassian offered his hand. He didn't command, didn't grab her by the arm as any other buyer might have. He simply extended his open palm, offering a choice. "Come," he said softly, but his voice held the unquestioned authority of an alpha. Elara looked at his hand, large, strong, with long fingers and strange, silvery scars crossing the palm. Then she looked up into his face, trying to read his intentions. But his expression was inscrutable, like a mask. She took his hand, and the instant their skin touched, a strange tremor ran through her body, like an electric current sparking from the point of contact to every nerve. His hand was hot, almost burning, and Elara instinctively understood. Shifter's body temperature ran higher than that of humans. Cassian frowned slightly, as if he too sensed something unusual, but said nothing. He helped her down from the platform, steadying her by the elbow as her legs, numb from standing so long, nearly gave out. "The shackles," he curtly ordered the auctioneer. "Of course, my lord, at once." The man rushed to obey, dropping the keys in his haste. As the heavy iron fell from Elara's wrists, she felt a strange relief. Not just physical, though her skin throbbed from the chafing, but mental too, as if not only the iron, but invisible chains binding her magic had been removed. "My lord," the auctioneer began, "the sales documents—" "Send them to the manor," Cassian cut him off. "And if a single line is incorrect, I'll come back, personally." The threat in his voice was so clear the auctioneer turned pale and nodded so vigorously it seemed his head might fall off. Cassian led Elara through the crowd to the waiting carriage. It was no ordinary cart, but a true traveling coach, black as night, with the Blackwood family crest on the doors, a howling wolf against the full moon. Chapter 2. The Castle in the Mountains. The journey to the Blackwood Castle took 2 days. Cassian rode alongside the carriage, his black stallion snorting and glancing warily at the coach, as if sensing something unusual about Elara. The Lord himself spoke to her scarcely during the stops, only inquiring if she was comfortable and making sure food was brought to her. Inside the carriage was surprisingly comfortable. Soft pillows, warm furs, even a small brazier to keep the air warm. Elara, who had grown used to deprivation over the past months, almost felt guilty for such luxury. The road led northward into the mountains. With every mile it became colder. The trees changed from leafy to pine, then gradually disappeared altogether, giving way to bare rocks and snowy peaks. On the second night, they did not stop at a roadside inn, but in a hunting lodge. Cassian personally lit the fire in the hearth, while his men, Elara counted 10 armed escorts, settled in the annex. "Eat," he said, setting down a plate of roasted meat and bread before her. "I'm not hungry," Elara lied, though her stomach betrayed her with a loud grumble. Cassian raised an eyebrow. "When did you last eat? And I mean a real meal, not the gruel they serve debtors." Elara kept silent, unwilling to admit she couldn't remember the last time she had eaten her fill. "Eat," he repeated, command ringing in his alpha's tone. "I have no use for a half-starved healer." So that's why he had bought her. Of course, it was foolish to hope for anything different. "Who am I supposed to heal?" she asked, nibbling at the bread. It was still warm, with a crisp crust, and Elara barely managed to stifle a moan of pleasure. "Anyone who needs it," Cassian answered evasively. "Many in my pack are wounded after recent skirmishes with a neighboring clan." "You're at war?" "We're defending ourselves," he corrected. "The Greyclaw clan believes my lands should be theirs. I disagree." He spoke calmly, but Elara noticed how his eyes flashed gold for a second, a sign that the wolf was close to the surface. "And you think a single healer can change the course of a war?" "I believe," Cassian said slowly, looking straight into her eyes, "that a healer with blood magic can do a great deal, more than she herself suspects." Elara shuddered. "Blood magic is forbidden. If the church finds out—" "The church has no power on my lands," Cassian interrupted. "And anyone who dares threaten a member of my pack will meet my fangs." "I'm not a member of your pack," Elara reminded him. "I'm your slave." Something flickered in his eyes, regret, annoyance, but it vanished so quickly she couldn't be sure she saw it. "In my pack, there are no slaves," he said, getting to his feet. "Rest. By noon tomorrow, we'll be at the castle." He left, leaving her alone by the fire. Elara stared at the dancing flames for a long time, pondering the strange turn her life had taken. From a merchant's daughter to a debtor, from a debtor to— what? The healer of a werewolf pack? It sounded like the start of one of those fairy tales her mother used to tell. Except fairy tales always ended happily, and in real life. In real life, girls with forbidden magic usually ended up at the stake. The Blackwood Castle appeared from the morning mist like an apparition. Black towers soared into the sky, crenellated walls surrounded the inner yard, and above all stood the central keep. So high its peak was lost in the low-hanging clouds. Yet what struck Elara most wasn't the castle itself, but its setting. The stronghold was literally carved into the rock, part of it burrowing deep into the mountain. It was an ancient place, built long before the Blackwood family came to rule these lands. "Welcome to Black Cliff," Cassian said, pride obvious in his voice. The gates swung open at their approach, and the carriage rolled into the inner courtyard. Elara expected to see grim warriors, hard gazes, perhaps even hostility towards an outsider, a human. Instead, the courtyard filled with people, men, women, children, greeting their alpha's return with joyful shouts. "Lord Cassian has returned! The alpha is home!" But when Elara stepped out of the carriage, silence fell. Dozens of eyes fixed on her with barely concealed curiosity. She sensed some of the shifters sniffing, catching her scent. "This is Elara," Cassian announced loudly, placing a hand on her shoulder. The gesture was both an introduction and a protection. "She is our new healer. Treat her with respect." "A human?" someone whispered in the crowd. "A healer," Cassian repeated, warning in his voice. From the crowd stepped an elderly woman with gray hair braided down her back. Despite her age, she moved with the grace of a shifter. "Welcome, child," she said, her voice unexpectedly warm. "I am Martha, the castle's housekeeper. Come, I'll show you your room." Martha led her across the yard to one of the towers. On the way, Elara felt the eyes on her, curious, evaluating, some unfriendly. "Don't mind them," Martha said quietly. "They're just not used to humans. The last one in the castle was a long time ago." "What happened to him?" Elara asked. Martha hesitated. "He betrayed the pack. Alpha Cassian tore out his throat himself." Elara shivered, and Martha quickly added, "But you won't betray us, right? You're a healer. Healers do no harm." "If only you knew," Elara thought, remembering her mother. The room was on the 3rd floor of the tower, spacious, with a large window overlooking the mountains, a canopy bed, a fireplace, even a small library of medical books. "Lord Cassian had everything prepared in advance," Martha explained. "He knew he'd bring a healer." "How did he know about me?" Elara asked. "About my ability?" "The Alpha has many sources," Martha replied evasively. "Rest for today. Tomorrow, you'll have work to do." When she left, Elara went to the window. Down in the yard, she saw Cassian standing among his warriors, deep in discussion. Then, as if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across the distance, and Elara felt that strange tremor again. What was he planning? Why had he really brought her here? The answer came later that very night. Chapter 3. The Cursed Beast. Elara was awakened by a howl, a long, mournful sound, full of indescribable pain. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding from the sudden awakening. Moonlight filled the room with silver, and from the low position of the moon, she realized dawn was near. The howl came again, and there was something in it that compelled her to get up. It wasn't just the howl of a wolf. There was too much human anguish in it. Throwing a shawl over her nightgown, Elara left her room. The castle corridors were empty, torches barely smoldering in their wall brackets. She followed the sound, her instincts guiding her turns through the maze-like halls. The howl led her to the east wing of the castle. It was colder and darker here. Dust covered the floor. Cobwebs hung from the ceilings. Clearly, this wing was unused. By a massive door, reinforced with iron bands, stood Martha. Seeing Elara, she didn't look surprised. "I knew you would come," Martha sighed. "Healers always sense the pain of others." "Who's in there?" Elara asked. Martha was silent for a long time, then replied, "Our secret, our curse, our sorrow." She slid back the bolt and opened the door a crack. "He won't hurt you, at least not intentionally." Elara entered a spacious room, more like a cave carved out of the rock. At the far wall, bound by heavy chains, was a creature. It was neither wolf nor man, but something in between, a nightmare blend, frozen in mid-transformation. An elongated muzzle with fangs, a body covered in black fur, but standing on two legs. The hands ended in claws, but still retained a vaguely human shape. And the eyes, silvery gray streaked with gold. "Cassian?" Elara breathed. The creature lifted its head, and recognition flickered in its gaze, quickly replaced by shame. It tried to turn away, to hide in the shadows, but the chains held it fast. "Go away," Cassian growled, his voice distorted by a guttural snarl. "Don't look at me." But Elara didn't leave. Instead, she walked closer, pushing past her instinctive fear. "What happened?" she asked gently. "A curse," he forced out. 3 years ago. A witch. I refused to marry her. She cursed me. Now, every night. This. "But during the day, you're normal?" "During the day, I'm a man. At night, neither man nor beast. Something in between. A monster." Elara knelt beside him, ignoring his warning growl. "That's why you bought me? Hoping blood magic could break the curse?" Cassian closed his eyes. "I've tried everything. Mages, healers, even other witches. No one can break Morrigan's curse. She's too powerful. But when I heard about you, about your magic, I found hope." "Tell me everything about the curse," Elara requested, settling in. "Every detail, the exact words the witch used, the circumstances, everything." And he told her how Morrigan had come to him 3 years ago, offering both a magical and matrimonial alliance. How he had refused because he didn't love her, didn't trust her. How she'd flown into a rage. She said, "Since you cannot love one who offers herself to you, you shall live divided. By day, the man you pretend to be. By night, the beast you truly are. Only when someone loves you in your most monstrous form, when they see the soul behind the monster, only then will you be whole again." "Love?" Elara mused. "Always love in these curses. Witches are so predictable." Cassian snorted, a sound closer to a sharp bark. "Who could love this?" He gestured at himself with a clawed hand. "Someone who can see beyond appearances," Elara replied. "Let me try to help, not to break the curse. I fear that's beyond my ability. But to ease the transformation, make it less painful?" "No," Cassian said sharply. "Blood magic is dangerous. I won't let you risk yourself." "You bought me for this very reason." "I bought you to save you from a fate worse than death," he exploded, his voice booming throughout the cavern. "Do you really think I don't know what Mortimer would have done to you? Or the tavern owner? I know what happens to girls in their establishments." Elara stared at him, stunned. You bought me to protect me?" Cassian turned away. "Don't ascribe noble motives to me. I needed a healer for the pack. The fact that you wield blood magic is a bonus. Maybe one day you'll find a way to help me. Maybe not. But at least here, you're safe." That night, Elara stayed with him until dawn. She told him stories, the same fairy tales her mother used to tell, of princesses and dragons, of cursed princes and magical roses. Cassian listened, and gradually the tension left his distorted body. His claws relaxed, his breathing became steadier. When the first rays of dawn broke into the room, Elara saw the transformation begin. It was agonizing to watch, his body twisting, bones breaking and realigning. Cassian grit his teeth, trying not to make a sound, but several times gut-wrenching groans escaped him. "Let me help," Elara begged, reaching out her hands. "No," he gasped through the pain. "Blood magic. Too dangerous." But Elara was already closer. She placed her palms on his distorted chest, over his heart. She closed her eyes and let her magic awaken. It was like diving into a raging river. Cassian's life force was powerful, ancient, wild. Elara could feel the curse. A dark thread wound around his soul, holding him suspended between two forms. She couldn't break the curse. It was too strong, the work of a master. But she could ease the pain of transformation, soften the edges where the magic tore him from within. Light poured from her hands, golden, warm. Cassian cried out, but this time it was with relief, not pain. The transformation sped up, and within moments a man stood before her. Tall, with a muscular body covered in scars from countless battles. Elara swayed, a wave of weakness washing over her. She had given too much of her own life force. "Elara!" Cassian caught her before she could fall. His hands were strong, warm, human. "What have you done? I told you." "You were suffering," she answered simply. "I couldn't bear to watch." He gazed at her for a long moment, his silvery gray eyes flooding with emotions she couldn't decipher. "You are impossible," he said softly, carefully laying her on the bed. "Rest. I'll have Martha bring you food and a tonic." As he pulled a blanket over her, Elara caught his hand. "Cassian," she whispered, "I'll find a way, I promise. I'll find a way to lift your curse." He squeezed her fingers in response. "You've already done more than anyone has in 3 years. Sleep now." Chapter 4. Healing the Pack. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. By day, Elara tended to the wounded warriors of the pack. By night, she pored over ancient texts in the castle's library, searching for any information she could find about witch curses. The first patient she healed was a young wolf named Gregor. He was no more than 20, and his right hand had been mangled in battle 3 months before. The wound refused to heal, despite the accelerated regeneration of werewolves, and Elara suspected that some silver remained in the flesh, the only metal that could truly harm their kind. "This is going to hurt," she warned him as she prepared her instruments. Gregor nodded, clenching his teeth. 2 other warriors stood nearby, ready to hold him if needed. Elara made an incision, ignoring the blood, and sent her consciousness into the wound. Blood magic allowed her to sense every cell, every disruption in the natural flow of life. And yes, deep in the muscle, a tiny fragment of silver was lodged. She removed it with tweezers, then placed her hands over the wound. This time she was more careful, not giving away too much of her own energy. Instead, she directed Gregor's life force, encouraging his body to heal itself more quickly. The flesh knit together under her hands, leaving only a pale scar behind. "By the gods," Gregor breathed, flexing his fingers. I thought I'd never be able to hold a sword with this hand again." News of her success spread through the castle like wildfire. Before long, a line formed outside her door. Warriors with old wounds, children with fevers, even pregnant women wanting to be sure their unborn children were healthy. Elara worked herself to exhaustion, but this was a different kind of tiredness than she'd known in prison. This was the weariness that came from useful labor, from the knowledge that she was truly helping others. The pack's attitude toward her gradually changed. Suspicious glances were replaced by gratitude. Warriors nodded to her with respect. Children smiled and waved. "You're working miracles," Martha said one evening, bringing dinner to Elara's room. "Half the pack is already calling you our guardian angel." Elara smiled wearily. "I'm just doing what I can." "Don't diminish your gifts, child," Martha said, stroking her head. "You give them hope, and hope is what we've been missing for a long, long time." That night, when Elara made her usual visit to the eastern wing, she found the door unlatched. She pushed it open and entered, expecting to see the beast. Instead, Cassian stood in the room in his human form. The sun had not yet set. "You're early?" he said, and there was nervousness in his voice. I'm sorry, I can come back later," Elara began, but he shook his head. "No, stay, there's something I want to show you." He led her to a window overlooking the mountains. The sun was sinking behind the peaks, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. "I used to dread sunset," Cassian said quietly. "Every night, I knew pain was coming, transformation, the loss of control. But now, because of you, the pain is dulled. I still turn into the beast, but it's not so agonizing anymore." "I'm glad I could help," Elara replied. He turned to her, and in the sunset light, his face looked chiseled from bronze. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "Risk yourself? Use magic that could kill you?" Elara thought for a moment before answering. "Because, for the first time in my life, I feel my magic is a gift, not a curse. People in my village flinched away from me. The church wanted to burn me at the stake. But here I can truly help. I can matter." "You always mattered," Cassian said softly, reaching out to gently brush a lock of hair from her face. "It's just that not everyone was wise enough to see it." His touch was tender, almost reverent, and Elara felt her heart beating faster in her chest. They stood so close, she could feel the warmth of his body, hear the rhythm of his heart. The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. Then, as the sun touched the horizon, Cassian stepped back. "Go," he said tensely. "The transformation will begin in a minute." Elara nodded and hurried out, but paused at the door. "Cassian, I'll come back later. To read to you." A faint smile touched his lips. "I'll be waiting." Chapter 5. The Shadow of the Past. Elara was beginning to feel like she had found her place at Black Cliff. The pack had accepted her, her work was meaningful, and every evening she spent hours with Cassian, sharing stories and quiet conversations. But peace could not last forever. Trouble arrived in the form of an elegant woman in a black cloak, who appeared at the castle on a cold autumn morning. Elara was in the infirmary, bandaging a warrior's wound when she felt something. A chill in the air, a heaviness in the atmosphere, as if reality itself had shuddered. "What is that?" she whispered. The warrior she was tending paled. "A witch," he breathed. "A powerful witch has come." Elara dropped the bandages and rushed out to the courtyard. There, surrounded by tense warriors, stood the most beautiful and terrifying woman she had ever seen. Tall, with midnight black hair falling to her waist and emerald green eyes, she radiated power. Not just magical power, but the absolute confidence of one who was used to commanding. "Morrigan," Cassian said, stepping out of the main building. His voice was as cold as ice. "You are not welcome here." The witch turned to him, a smile blooming on her perfect face, but it was the smile of a predator who had spotted her prey. "Oh, Cassian," she purred. "Are you really still holding a grudge? It's been 3 years. "You cursed me," he reminded her, "for refusing to marry you." "I offered you power," Morrigan retorted. "An alliance between the wolves and the witches. We could have ruled together, conquered the kingdom. But you," her eyes narrowed, "you chose pride over power." "I chose freedom," Cassian replied. "Now leave, before I command my pack to tear you apart." Morrigan laughed, and there was something wild and dangerous in her laughter. "Oh, your pack wouldn't dare. They know what I'm capable of. But I'm not here to fight, darling. I came to see her." Her gaze shifted to Elara, and Elara felt the witch's magic probing her. invisible fingers examining every part of her soul. "So this is she," Morgan drawled. "The healer with blood magic? How interesting." "Leave her alone," Cassian warned, moving between them. "I won't harm her." Morgan raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm simply curious. Tell me, girl, do you think you can break my curse?" Elara lifted her chin, refusing to show fear. "I'll try." Morgan threw her head back and laughed. "Oh, such bravery! Or is it foolishness?" "No matter. Let me give you a bit of advice, healer. The curse I cast cannot be broken by force. It can only be undone by the condition I set. Only when someone loves him in his worst form, when they see the soul behind the monster, only then will he be whole again." "I know the condition," Elara said. "You do?" Morgan tilted her head. "Then know this as well. Many have tried. Dozens of women, more beautiful and noble than you, tried to love the beast. All of them ran in terror. What makes you think you'll be any different?" "Because I'm not trying to love the beast," Elara answered calmly. "I already love the man." A hush fell over the courtyard. Cassian stood frozen, looking at her with an expression she could not read. Morgan studied her for a long moment, then smiled slowly. "Interesting," she murmured. "Very interesting. Well, let's see if your love endures. Curses have a way of testing even the strongest feelings." She turned, her cloak swirling around her. "Until we meet again, Cassian. I'll be watching your progress with great interest." With those words, she vanished in a swirl of black smoke, leaving only the scent of sulfur and ozone behind. Cassian turned to Elara, his eyes stormy with emotion. What did you just say?" Elara swallowed, only now realizing she had spoken her words publicly in front of the whole pack. "I told the truth," she whispered. "I love you, Cassian. Not the beast, not the alpha, not the lord. You, the man who listens to my stories, who values my words, who sees me for who I am." He looked at her for what seemed like an eternity. Then, ignoring the gathered crowd, he stepped forward and kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperation and hope, fear and joy, all crashing together. Elara kissed him back with the same passion, rising onto her toes to wrap her arms around his neck. When they finally broke apart, Cassian pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you," he whispered. "Gods, I love you so much it terrifies me." "Then we're both scared." Elara smiled through tears of joy. Around them, the pack erupted in a chorus of celebratory howls, rejoicing for their alpha. But Elara and Cassian heard nothing but the beating of each other's hearts. Chapter 6. Fighting the Curse. After their confession, everything changed between them. By day, Cassian no longer avoided her. Instead, he found excuses to spend time together. He showed her secret trails in the mountains, taught her to read animal tracks, and shared stories about his pack. At night, when he assumed the form of the beast, Elara stayed by his side. She would read to him, speak with him. Even though his speech was distorted in this shape, they managed to find ways to communicate. But the curse still held him. Every sunset brought the transformation, and although the pain had lessened thanks to Elara's magic, he was still trapped between two forms. Elara spent countless hours in the library, poring over ancient texts on curses. She learned that witch magic operated on the principle of balance. Every curse contained a condition for breaking it embedded within its structure. The real challenge was to truly understand that condition. "Only when someone loves him in his worst form," she muttered under her breath, reading her notes for the 100th time. "But I do love him. Why hasn't the curse been broken?" "Maybe love alone isn't enough." came a voice from the doorway. Elara turned and saw Martha, carrying a tray of food. "What do you mean?" she asked. Martha set down the tray and sat across from her. "Witches are crafty, child. They rarely say what they mean directly." Morrigan said, "Love him in his worst form." "But what if his worst form isn't the beast?" Elara frowned, pondering the words. "You think—" "I think we all carry darkness inside," Martha said gently. "Parts of ourselves we're ashamed of, that we hide from others. Maybe the true curse isn't physical at all. Maybe it's something much deeper." Elara thought about this. What was Cassian's worst self? Not the beast. She had seen him in that form countless times and never been afraid. But there was something else. That night, when she went to his chambers, the beast was restless, pacing back and forth, claws scraping the stone. "What's wrong?" Elara asked, approaching cautiously. "Go away," he growled, his words barely intelligible through his altered form. "Don't want you to see." "See what?" He stopped, his golden eyes meeting hers. "A monster. A true monster. Not this." He gestured at his distorted body. "This is only the shape. But inside, I'm a beast. I have killed Elara, many times. Sometimes because I had to. Sometimes because I wanted to. I enjoyed my enemy's pain. His voice broke. "I am the thing Morrigan called me. Proud, cruel, a monster who values power above all else." Elara approached slowly, placing her hands on his furred muzzle, making him look at her. "You were that," she said softly. "But people change, Cassian. You've changed." "How can you know that?" "Because a monster wouldn't have bought me to save me from a worse fate. A monster wouldn't have spent a fortune to set up an infirmary for his pack. A monster wouldn't listen to my stories every night as if they were the most important thing in the world." Tears glimmered in his animal eyes. "You see the best version of me, the version I want to be. But what if that's not truly me? What if that cruel wolf is still down there, just hiding?" "Then I'll love both parts of you," Elara answered simply. "The light and the darkness. That's what makes you human. Not perfection, but the struggle between your best and worst impulses, and you choose every day to be better." Something shifted in the air. Light began to shine from the beast, dimly at first, then brighter and brighter. "Elara, what?" But she couldn't answer, because magic was swirling around them, ancient and powerful. She felt the curse splinter, felt the threads binding him begin to unravel. The transformation was sudden. The beast vanished, and in his place stood Cassian, entirely a man, though the sun had long since set. They stood in silence, hardly daring to breathe. Then, as if to test it, Cassian walked to the window and looked at the moon hanging in the night sky. Nothing happened, no transformation, no pain. "It's broken," he breathed, turning to Elara with an expression beyond belief. "The curse is broken." Elara ran to him, and he caught her, spinning and laughing in sheer joy. "You did it," he repeated again and again. "You truly did it." "We did it," she corrected. "Together." He set her down and kissed her, and in that kiss was freedom, a promise of a future without the shackles of a curse. Chapter 7. Morrigan's Return. The news that the curse had been broken spread through the kingdom like wildfire. Cassian's pack celebrated for 3 days straight. Messengers from other clans arrived with congratulations and offers of alliance. But Elara couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Morrigan had said she would be watching. Could the witch really accept her defeat so easily? The answer came 2 weeks after the breaking of the curse. Elara was working in the infirmary when she heard shouts from outside. She rushed out to find that the sky had gone black, even though it was midday. Dark clouds swirled above the castle, and from them fell black snow. "Elara!" Cassian grabbed her hand. "Inside, quickly." "What's happening?" "Morgan," he answered grimly. "She's attacking." They barely made it inside before the first wave of magic crashed against the castle's protective barriers. The building shuddered from foundation to roof. "Your protection won't hold." Morgan's voice, amplified by magic, echoed throughout the castle. "Come out, both of you, or I'll destroy everything you love." Cassian gritted his teeth. "She's bluffing. The castle's wards have held for centuries." But Elara could see cracks spreading along the walls. She could feel the witch's magic eating away at the ancient protective spells. "We have to go out," she said. "If we don't, she'll kill everyone." "No." Cassian gripped her shoulders. "I won't surrender you to her." "We go together," Elara said resolutely. "We don't have to fight her. We have to talk to her." "Talk? To the mad witch who cursed me?" "To the woman who loved you so much she broke when you rejected her," Elara corrected gently. "Cassian, the curse came from pain, not malice. Maybe we can reach her." He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "All right, but if she tries to hurt you, I'll tear her apart. Consequences be damned." They stepped out into the courtyard, where Morgan was waiting. The witch hovered in the air, surrounded by darkness, her eyes blazing green fire. "At last!" she hissed. "I thought I'd have to raze the whole castle to the ground." "Morgan," Cassian began, but Elara squeezed his hand, stopping him. "May I speak?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then nodded. Elara stepped forward. "Lady Morgan, I know you're angry." "Angry?" The witch laughed. "Oh, sweet girl, I am beyond anger. I offered him everything, power, might, eternity, and he refused me. And now he finds you, a mere healer, and suddenly the curse is broken? It's an insult." "You're right," Elara agreed, and Cassian looked at her in surprise. "It's not fair. You loved him, and he didn't return your feelings. That hurts. I know that kind of pain." "What could you possibly know about—" "My husband rejected me," Elara interrupted. "Called me broken, useless. I know what it's like to love someone who doesn't see your worth. It breaks something inside you." Morgan fell silent, the darkness around her lessening a little. "But," Elara continued, "the answer to that pain isn't to cause pain to others. Cassian couldn't control whom he did or didn't love. You can't blame him for lacking feelings any more than you can blame yourself for having them." Slowly, Morgan descended to the ground, the darkness dissipating around her. "What do you know of love?" she asked quietly, her fury gone, replaced by exhaustion. "You're young. You don't know what it means to love someone for centuries, to watch him look at others, smile at them, knowing he'll never smile at you that way." "You're right," Elara said gently. "I don't know what that's like, but I know that hurting the one you love won't make them love you back. It only destroys what could have been." Cassian stepped forward, his voice softer than Elara had ever heard it. "Morgan, I was young and foolish. I valued power more than people. I rejected you harshly, never thinking about your feelings. For that, I'm sorry." The witch looked at him, and tears shone in her eyes. "You apologize? Now? After everything?" "Better late than never," he said, holding out his hand. "Morgan, you're a powerful witch, one of the strongest in the kingdom. You deserve someone who sees your worth, who admires your strength. I could never be that person for you. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve love." Morgan gazed at his outstretched hand for a long time. Then, to everyone's amazement, she laughed. not the mad laugh of bitterness, but a real, almost sorrowful sound. "You've changed," she said. "The curse has taught you what years as Alpha never did. Suffering has made you wiser." She took his hand, and as their palms touched, the last vestiges of dark magic evaporated into the air. "I lift my curse," she declared, her voice ringing with power. "Fully and forever. You are free, Cassian Blackwood. And you," she turned to Elara, "take care of him. At last, he's found someone who makes him worthy of love." With those words, Morrigan vanished, not in a swirl of darkness and rage, but in a gentle radiance, like the light of sunset. Elara turned to Cassian, and he pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "You are incredible," he whispered. "You did what no one else ever could. You healed not just me, but her as well." "We did it together," Elara corrected softly. "Your apology meant more than you know." The pack, who had watched the scene unfold in tense silence, erupted into howls of celebration. Cassian was truly free, and their healer had proved herself capable of far more than merely mending wounds of the flesh. Chapter 8. A New Beginning. The following weeks were dedicated to rebuilding. The attack from the Greyclaw clan, led by their alpha who tried to take advantage of the chaos after Morrigan's visit, was repelled. Cassian personally negotiated peace, using his new ability to look beyond pride and power. Elara continued healing the wounded, but now she also began teaching others the basics of healing. Not blood magic, that remained her unique gift, but herbcraft, wound care, and how to diagnose various illnesses. "You're building a whole school of healers," Cassian remarked one evening, watching as she explained the properties of different herbs to a group of young wolves. "The pack needs more than one healer," Elara replied. "What if I fall ill or get hurt? Someone has to know how to help." He smiled, that new smile he'd only worn since the curse was broken. Open, warm, with no trace of his old bitterness. "You think like the pack's moon," he said. Elara blushed. They hadn't yet discussed the future or talked about what would come next. She knew he loved her, and she loved him, but... "Elara?" Cassian took her hand, drawing her aside from the students. "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race with worry. What if he decided she wasn't fit to be the pack's moon? That her blood magic made her too dangerous? "I know we haven't talked about the future," he began, and Elara braced herself for the worst. "I know I brought you here as a slave, that you had no choice." "Cassian, let me finish, please," he said gently. "I want you to have a choice now, a real choice. You're free to leave, if you wish. I'll give you a home anywhere in the kingdom, provide for you for life. Or," he dropped to one knee, taking her breath away, "or you can stay, not as a healer, not as a slave, but as my equal, as my moon, as my wife. Elara, you saw me at my absolute worst, literally, and still loved me. You healed not only my curse, but my soul. Will you marry me? Not because you have to, but because you want to." Elara looked at him, this mighty alpha kneeling before her, offering not just marriage, but choice, freedom, equality. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He stood and kissed her, and around them the pack let out a howl, not for the lifting of a curse, but celebrating a new beginning for their alpha and future Luna. The wedding was set for the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, a symbol that even in darkness there is light, hope, and love. On the night before the wedding, Elara couldn't sleep. She stood by her window, gazing at the moonlit, snow-covered mountains. A soft knock drew her attention. "Come in." Martha entered, carrying a large box. "The traditional wedding gown of the alpha pair," she said, opening the box. "It was worn by Cassian's mother and her mother before her, going back centuries." Elara caught her breath at the sight of it. The dress was made of white silk, embroidered with silver wolves running under a full moon. Simple in cut, yet incredibly beautiful. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll try it on." Martha smiled. "Let's see if it fits our new Luna." The dress fit perfectly, as if made just for Elara. When she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized her reflection. Not a broken daughter, nor a slave, nor even just a healer, but a woman ready to become the moon of the most powerful pack in the kingdom. "You're beautiful, child," Martha said, wiping away tears. "Cassian is a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Elara replied. "He could have chosen anyone, any noble she-wolf, any beauty, but he chose me." "He chose you because you're the only one who saw his true self." Martha hugged her. "And that's the greatest gift anyone can give, being truly seen." The ceremony was held atop the mountain, outdoors. The whole pack was there, over 300 wolves, and even delegates from other clans came to witness the union. Elara walked barefoot through the snow, a wolf tradition symbolizing their bond to the earth and nature. Cassian waited at the altar, dressed in the alpha's traditional garb. Dark leather trousers and a vest embroidered with silver. When she reached him, his eyes shone with emotion. "You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," he whispered. The oldest elder, a wolf who had outlived 5 generations of alphas, led the ceremony. The words were ancient, in a tongue few understood, but the meaning was clear. A promise to protect, to respect, to love until the end of days. When it was time to exchange vows, Cassian took Elara's hands in his. "Elara," he began, "you came into my life when I was broken, cursed, lost. You saw not a monster, not an alpha, not a lord. You saw the man. You healed me, not with magic, but with love. I vow to protect you, respect you, and love you every day of my life. I vow to be worthy of the gift you give me. I vow to see you, cherish you, and choose you again and again, until death parts us." Elara smiled through her tears as her turn came. "Cassian," her voice trembled with emotion, "you saved me from a fate worse than death. You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. But most of all, you gave me yourself, all sides of you, light and dark, strength and vulnerability. I vow to stand by you, to heal you when you're hurt, support you when you're weak, love you when you feel unloved. I vow to be your partner, your equal, your moon until the end of my days." The elder tied their wrists with a silver ribbon, symbolizing their union. "Under the moon, under the stars, before the pack," he proclaimed, "I declare you bound. Alpha and Luna, one soul in 2 bodies." Cassian kissed Elara, and the pack howled as one, their voices joining in a single joyous song of celebration. The festivities lasted all night, dancing, singing, feasting. Elara danced with Cassian beneath the stars, truly feeling at home for the first time in her life. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, drawing her close. "How much my life has changed," she admitted. "A year ago, I was being sold at auction like cattle. Today, I'm Luna of the strongest pack. It feels like a dream." "If it's a dream," Cassian whispered in her ear, "then I never want to wake up." Later that night, as the celebration faded, Cassian brought Elara to their new rooms, a grand chamber atop the central tower, with windows overlooking the mountains in every direction. "I want you to see the whole world from up here," he explained. "No more barriers, no more walls, just the open sky and endless possibilities. Elara went to the window, looking down at the slumbering pack, the snowy mountains stretching to the horizon, the moon hanging as a giant silver disk in the black sky. "Do you know what amazes me most?" she asked, as Cassian embraced her from behind. "What?" "I spent my whole life feeling broken. Thought blood magic was a curse. But now I realize it was a gift, leading me to you. Everything I endured, every pain, every trial, brought me here. To you, to home." Cassian turned her to face him, his eyes shining with love, and something more: gratitude, wonder, awe. "You were never broken, my love," he said softly. "You were like a sword tempered in fire. Everything you went through made you stronger, wiser, more capable of love despite the pain. You are not broken. You are perfect." He kissed her again, this time slowly, gently, and Elara felt the last remnants of her old fears melt away. She was home. She was loved. She was whole. Epilogue. 5 years later, spring arrived in Black Cliff in an explosion of color. Snow had receded from the lower slopes, revealing fields of wildflowers. Birds returned, filling the air with song, and children's laughter echoed through the forest. Elara sat in her healing garden, surrounded by her apprentices, now 20 in total, a mix of wolves and humans, all learning the healing arts. She was demonstrating the proper way to harvest medicinal roots when she heard a familiar peal of laughter. "Mama! Mama, look!" 3-year-old Lila, her daughter, was running through the garden, her dark curls bouncing in the wind. Chasing after her was her twin brother Thomas, his silvery eyes, an exact match for his father's, shining with excitement. "Careful with the herbs," Elara warned, but she smiled as she watched them play. The twins were a miracle she'd never thought she'd have. When she became pregnant 6 months after the wedding, Elara had been in shock. The healers said her blood magic, joined with Cassian's life force through their bond, had somehow healed what was once thought hopeless. "Love heals," Cassian had said, holding her hand during their first ultrasound. "You always knew that. You just never thought it could apply to you too." Now, watching her children play, Elara knew he'd been right. Love had healed her, not just her body, but her soul. "They're like a hurricane," Martha's voice chimed in beside her. The old housekeeper, now a beloved grandmother to the children, was smiling as she watched the twins. "They're wolf pups," Elara laughed. "What else could we expect?" Both children had inherited the ability to shift, a rare trait in children of mixed parentage. Lila had first transformed into a tiny silver wolf pup at age 2, causing both pride and panic in her parents. "The alpha is returning," Martha announced, nodding toward the road leading to the castle. Elara stood, recognizing Cassian's familiar figure at the head of a small group of riders. He'd been traveling all week, visiting neighboring clans, strengthening the alliances that had turned the north from a patchwork of rival territories into a unified region. The twins spotted him and squealed with delight, rushing for the gates. "Papa! Papa's home!" Cassian dismounted and scooped up both children, spinning them in the air as they giggled. Elara watched, her heart overflowing with love. This was not the cold, distant alpha the kingdom once feared. This was a father, a husband, a man who had learned to value love above power. He set the children down and made his way to Elara, his eyes finding her in the crowd with that same unwavering certainty as always. "Hello, my love," he said, drawing her against him and kissing her hair. "I missed you." "You were gone only a week," she teased. "That's too long," he replied. "Every day without you feels like an eternity." "Charmer," she accused, but pressed herself closer to him. They stood together for several long moments, watching their children chase each other, the pack tending to its work, the sun setting behind the mountains. "I have news," Cassian said at last. "The Royal Council wants us to open a school for healers in the capital. They've seen what you've done here, how your apprentices have spread across the kingdom, bringing healing and hope. They want to make it official." Elara stepped back to look at him. "An official school? Recognized by the crown?" "More than that." Pride flickered in Cassian's eyes. "They want to lift the ban on blood magic, to call it what it truly is, a gift for healing, not a curse to be hidden away." Tears filled Elara's eyes. All her life, her magic had been a secret to keep, a reason for shame. Now, "It's because of you," she whispered. "Your influence, your support." "It's because of you," Cassian corrected. "You showed the kingdom that blood magic can heal, not destroy. You trained a new generation of healers. You changed the world, my love. I was only lucky enough to witness it." That night, once the children were asleep and the castle was quiet, Elara and Cassian stood on the balcony of their chambers, gazing at the stars. "Sometimes it feels like this is all a dream," Elara confessed. "Too good to be true?" "Then we're dreaming the same dream." Cassian pulled her closer. "And I never want to wake up." He turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face with that familiar tenderness. "Do you remember the riddle you asked me that first night?" Elara smiled. "I am held by those who cannot touch me, broken by those who never speak me, and kept by those who never sought me. Kings command me, but I command fate. What am I?" "Promise," Cassian answered. "I knew the answer from the first night. But a promise can't be forced. It must be offered freely." "And now?" Elara asked. "What promise do you give me today?" Cassian's eyes softened. "The same one I gave 5 years ago? The same one I'll give in another 5, 50, 500 years? I promise to love you, to see you, to choose you, every day, every choice, every breath. You are my moon, my heart, my soul, and that's a promise I'll keep as long as there are stars in the sky." Elara rose on tiptoe and kissed him, pouring into that kiss all her love, all her gratitude, all the wonder of their journey. When their lips parted, she nestled against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I promise too," she whispered. Above them, the moon shone as a perfect silver disk, illuminating the castle, the pack, the kingdom they had built together. Elara and Cassian stood in each other's arms, two once broken souls who had found healing in each other's love. And in their story, there was hope for everyone who had ever felt broken, for everyone who had ever been deemed unworthy, for everyone who ever doubted their worth. Because true healing, as they had learned, comes not from magic or might, but from being seen, being valued, and being loved just as you are. And that promise was the most powerful magic of all.